Today is a beautiful day to analyze the latest mysteries unfolding in Port Charles. Did Willow honestly think she could just push Drew into the pool in the dead of night and walk away without a single witness? If you ask me, the sheer audacity of this calculated move is staggering. We are looking at a psychological motive so dark, it completely shatters the illusion of the sweet, innocent mother she constantly pretends to be. But the unforeseen fallout of her desperate actions might just create a deadly ripple effect that pulls innocent bystanders into her tangled web of deceit. When we look at the current landscape of the canvas, it looks like a dangerous deadlock for several key players who are all struggling to survive their own personal nightmares. Charlotte is wandering around with an incredibly heavy heart, desperately missing Valentine after his mysterious disappearance following his risky dealings with Z. Her shattered trust in the adults around her has left her incredibly vulnerable and isolated. Meanwhile, Willow is backed into a terrifying corner of her own making. With Jens finally apprehended, the steady supply of specialized paralytic drugs keeping Drew incapacitated is rapidly running dry. Drew is on the verge of waking up, and if he does, Willow's darkest secrets will be exposed to the light of day. This implies that Willow has a massive ulterior motive to ensure Drew never speaks again, pushing her toward a truly unthinkable act. Let us take a closer look at Charlotte and her recent behavior. If you guys have been paying attention to the background details, you have probably noticed that she is spending an unusual amount of time lounging by the pool this summer. At first glance, it looks like the typical behavior of a teenager, trying to soak up the sun, enjoy the warm weather, and escape her complicated family dynamics. However, if you ask me, there is a much deeper psychological motive at play here. Gio recently took a job as a lifeguard at this very location. I strongly suspect that Charlotte's frequent, lingering visits are not just about getting a tan or reading a book by the water. It appears she has developed a quiet, intense fascination with Gio, finding a sense of stability in his watchful presence. Let us consider the immense psychological toll that Valentine's absence has taken on Charlotte. For months, she was forced to harbor the massive secret that her father was hiding in an attic, constantly looking over her shoulder and fearing discovery. When Valentine finally made the agonizing decision to surrender and subsequently vanished to deal with Z, it completely shattered Charlotte's sense of security. She is a young woman desperately searching for an anchor in a sea of chaos and deception. If you ask me, her gravitation toward the pool is less about recreation and entirely about finding a safe haven. Gio, with his calm demeanor and protective role as a lifeguard, represents the exact kind of stability she is craving. It is a psychological motive rooted in profound grief and a desperate need for a reliable protector. Could it be that Charlotte is deliberately putting herself in Gio's orbit, hoping he will notice her amidst the crowded deck? I believe we are about to witness a minor but incredibly significant incident that completely shifts their dynamic. Imagine Charlotte, perhaps deeply distracted by her overwhelming thoughts about Valentine and her uncertain future, losing her footing on the wet tiles and slipping into the deep end of the water. In a flash, Gio would undoubtedly dive in to pull her out, demonstrating his competence and care. This swift, heroic action would be the exact catalyst needed to make Charlotte view Gio in a completely different light. It is a classic daytime trope, but it effectively establishes Gio as a protector in her eyes, laying the essential groundwork for a much deeper emotional connection. But while a budding teenage romance is undeniably compelling, the real danger is lurking just beneath the surface of this seemingly idyllic summer setting. Let us pivot back to Willow and her escalating panic. If you ask me, her current psychological state is a ticking time bomb waiting to detonate. She knows that Drew is slowly regaining his faculties, his mind fighting through the lingering haze of the drugs. The crippling fear of an unforeseen fallout if Drew manages to expose her lies is driving her to the absolute brink of madness. This is no longer about simple self-preservation. It is about survival at any cost, protecting her carefully constructed life. I suspect Willow is meticulously plotting a calculated move to eliminate the threat permanently, ensuring her secrets die with him. I believe Willow might orchestrate a chilling, highly premeditated scenario to solve her massive problem. Under the cover of darkness, when the grounds are completely deserted, she could secretly transport the still vulnerable, wheelchair-bound Drew to the edge of the water. The setting is absolutely perfect for her dark ulterior motive. A drowning looks like a tragic, unfortunate accident, especially for a man who is already medically compromised and physically weak. If you ask me, Willow's ability to coldly execute this plan reveals a deeply disturbing psychological motive, proving she is capable of immense cruelty. She wants to watch the problem sink to the bottom of the deep end, ensuring her pristine reputation remains completely intact and buried forever. However, Willow is completely unaware of the unpredictable wild card in this dangerous deadlock. Charlotte, plagued by severe insomnia and agonizing worry over Valentine, is also wandering the grounds that very same night. The heavy silence of the pool area often provides a necessary sanctuary for those with heavy hearts and restless minds. I can easily picture Charlotte sitting quietly in the shadows, lost in her melancholic thoughts, when the stillness is suddenly shattered by a heavy, violent splash. This implies that Willow's supposedly perfect crime is about to be witnessed, or at least interrupted, by the absolute last person she would ever expect to be awake at that hour. When Charlotte rushes toward the alarming sound, she would find Drew sinking beneath the dark surface, with absolutely no one else around to help. Willow, having hastily executed her calculated move, would have already fled into the shadows, desperate to establish an alibi. Driven by pure instinct and perhaps a desperate psychological need to save someone since she cannot save Valentine, Charlotte would bravely dive into the freezing water. But saving a grown, unresponsive man is an incredibly difficult, nearly impossible task for a young teenager. If you ask me, Charlotte is about to severely overestimate her physical strength, turning a brave rescue mission into a terrifying dual tragedy as the weight of the man threatens to claim them both. Just as all hope seems completely lost and Charlotte begins to succumb to sheer exhaustion, swallowing water and fighting for air, the true hero of this narrative suddenly emerges. Geo, perhaps working a late closing shift, organizing equipment, or simply doing a final security check of the area, would hear the frantic, desperate struggle. Without a single second of hesitation, he would plunge into the dark water to intervene. This is exactly where Geo's rigorous lifeguard training and innate bravery truly shine through the darkness. I suspect he will manage the incredible, physically demanding feat of pulling both the drowning teenager and the incapacitated man to the safety of the concrete deck, fighting against the odds. In one single night, Geo transforms from a simple poolside crush into a literal, undeniable savior. The immediate aftermath of this near fatal event will be incredibly chaotic, confusing, and filled with frantic medical interventions. Drew will likely remain completely unconscious, his lungs compromised, and he will be rushed back to intensive care, leaving everyone to falsely assume he somehow wandered off and tragically fell in. Willow will undoubtedly play the part of the horrified, grieving loved one, expertly masking her shattered trust and dark secrets behind a thick veil of fake tears and dramatic gasps. If you ask me, Willow will temporarily breathe a massive sigh of relief, foolishly believing her calculated move has successfully eliminated the immediate threat without implicating her in a heinous attempted murder. This brings us to a highly critical crossroads in our speculation regarding how this storyline will unfold. Let us deeply explore scenario A. In this version of events, it looks like Willow's sinister plan actually works flawlessly, at least for the time being. The authorities and the medical staff quickly conclude that Drew's near drowning was a tragic, unavoidable result of his compromised state following the severe withdrawal of Jens's dangerous drugs. Willow successfully maintains her angelic facade, and Drew remains trapped in a coma, entirely unable to speak his truth. However, this implies that Charlotte unknowingly holds the key to unraveling the entire mystery. Even if she did not clearly see Willow's face in the dark, she might slowly remember a crucial detail, a unique scent, a specific piece of clothing, or a fleeting shadow that eventually points directly to foul play. On the other hand, we have a much more dangerous possibility in scenario B. Could it be that Geo, the highly observant lifeguard, notices something incredibly amiss about the scene? In scenario B, Geo's heroic rescue efforts make him a central, indispensable figure in the ongoing investigation. He might quickly realize that the security gates were locked in a very specific way, or that Drew's medical wheelchair was positioned far too deliberately at the very edge of the deep end. If Geo starts asking logical questions and pointing out these glaring inconsistencies, Willow's calculated move could quickly begin to unravel. Furthermore, Geo and Charlotte's shared trauma from that terrifying night would bond them deeply, creating a formidable, investigative team that might inadvertently stumble upon Willow's dark ulterior motive. Regardless of exactly which scenario plays out on our screens, the emotional fallout for both Charlotte and Geo will be incredibly profound and long-lasting. If you ask me, this highly traumatic night will serve as the ultimate, undeniable catalyst for their romantic relationship. Charlotte, who has felt so deeply abandoned, isolated, and lost without Valentine guiding her, will finally find a steady, fiercely reliable presence in Geo. He quite literally saved her life, and that kind of profound, overwhelming gratitude easily blossoms into deep, unwavering affection. We are likely looking at the beautiful beginning of a powerful, emotional romance that provides a much needed stark contrast to the dark psychological warfare Willow is secretly waging in the background. Let us also deeply analyze the devastating psychological impact this event will have on Willow's fragile state of mind. She will be forced to live with the constant, gnawing paranoia that someone, somewhere, knows exactly what she did in the dark. Every single time she crosses paths with Charlotte or Geo, she will be violently reminded of her own monstrous actions and the incredibly fragile nature of her freedom. This implies that Willow might become increasingly erratic, making even more desperate, uncalculated mistakes to cover her tracks. Her calculated move to silence Drew might ultimately be the very thing that accelerates her spectacular downfall. It is a classic tale of a cover up becoming far worse than the original crime, proving that you can never truly bury the truth, especially when there are observant, intelligent people waiting in the wings to expose you. In conclusion, while it certainly looks like Willow might temporarily escape the severe legal consequences of her horrific actions, I highly doubt her dark secrets will remain buried forever. The nighttime pool incident is an absolute masterclass in soap opera suspense, brilliantly blending a burgeoning teenage romance with a chilling, cold-blooded attempted murder. Will Charlotte slowly piece together the terrifying truth of what she heard and saw that night? Will Gio's sharp, heroic instincts lead him to uncover a sinister, overarching plot? Or will Drew finally wake up from his watery nightmare and unleash an unforeseen fallout that completely destroys Willow's carefully curated life once and for all? You guys know exactly how these writers operate. Nothing is ever as simple as a tragic accident. We will just have to keep watching closely to see whose shattered trust will ultimately bring the whole fragile house of cards crashing down.